I would like to welcome you to the first community conversation on climate change. It's called The Future of Food in Muskegon County, and it's the first in a series, and it's based on a resource, a book, and a website called Drawdown, which outlines the top 100 strategies that can bring down greenhouse gas emissions, and many of them that we can do in our own communities. I'm Tanya Kabala with West Michigan Environmental Action Council, their new Lakeshore outreach organizer for Muskegon and the Lakeshore, together with Sophie Stopker of the Michigan chapter of the Sierra Club and Renee Hesseling. We have organized an excellent group of local experts to discuss food. We know the pandemic heightened our awareness of needs in our area, and we know that climate change will also bring about changes that we need to get ready for. Each panelist is going to give a brief summary of who they are and their relationship to the food system in Muskegon County, and then they will answer questions, including lessons that we've learned so far from the pandemic, what's in place now that's working well, and what we need to have in place or do going forward. We'll take questions and answers from everyone with the chat, and ask that you remain muted as we've got such a large group tonight. And we're very honored to have Jeff Alk as our moderator. He is the city manager in Montague, Michigan. He served as the executive director of the Muskegon Conservation District for 4 years. I know him well in that capacity. We worked together on getting White Lake off the toxic hotspot list before starting work at the city. Coming from a background in natural resource management and freshwater ecology, his work on municipal projects often integrates the human connection with the natural environment. For several years, he helped to manage the Montague Farmers Market, seeking to strengthen the connection between local farm producers and the White Lake community. He has a master's degree from Miami University in Ohio, and he's served on a number of local and state conservation boards. And I am going to give it all over to Jeff, because it is his job now.
All right.
Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Tanya. And thanks to the West Michigan Environmental Action Council and Sierra Club for hosting this and getting this going. I think great conversations. Really looking forward to the panel discussion tonight. I think Tanya actually asked me to be moderator with the whole Zoom environment, what's happening right now, untraditional way to meet, and I'm an untraditional city manager from the standpoint of I have no public administration background training. My background is in natural resources, as Tanya mentioned. So came to the job with the city, first as zoning administrator, assistant city manager, and as part of that was managing the city's farmers market. Because of that background, kind of the natural resources, I really want to strengthen that connection with the local community. And so it was trying to figure out all the different ways to make that connection for the local food network, bringing the community in, and kind of strengthening that arena. So I think this discussion fits in well with that. When I took over the farmers market, one of the things we wanted to do was focus on seeing if we could support the local farmers in the area and getting them to the farmers market, and then having that local community connection. So looked at a whole bunch of untraditional ways of doing that, everything from putting an emphasis on recruiting people within 100 miles. So we were defining local as within 100 miles of the city, seeing if we could get farmers from that area to come to the farmers market and interact with our community. Some of the other components of getting kind of that information out there, and we have Amy on tonight. She'll recognize this, Live White Lake. So we put together some placards. So that one was Farm White Lake, to encourage people to know what the local farms were. So everybody that was at the farm that was local put this placard out, talked about what the produce was, fruits or vegetables, and where that farm was. The other thing we did was trying to integrate giving out tokens within the community. So $2 tokens handed out at different events as a way for people that could cash them in at the farmers market. So really trying to strengthen that connection between the farmers and the local community. both working with the agricultural community and then working with the public in general. My heart and soul is kind of in this local community connection, not only because of what I've done in the past, my current position, but all the different books and resources that I've used kind of throughout my career. Everything from looking at stuff that Peter's done. So it's great to have Peter here this evening, looking at other kind of well-known novelists, whether that's Bill McGibbon or E.F. Schumacher, these local connections and bringing them into the community. So I think this is a great panel discussion this evening because we have a breadth of people to kind of talk through some of the questions and ideas that we're going to discuss tonight. Just to quickly introduce our panel this evening, we have Peter Bain, co-owner of Blue Sky Farm and Permaculture Center, Renee Hesselink, manager of Kitchen 242 at the Muskegon Farmers Market, Lori Lundell, co-owner of Lundell Farms, Samantha Otto, food and farm educator from McLaughlin Groves Urban Farm, and Rose Spickler, membership manager of the West Michigan Sustainable Business Forum. So to kind of lead kind of this first part of the discussion, I'm going to kind of walk through each one of the panelists there. If you could kind of describe for us, you and your organization and that connection to the local food system. A different way of kind of looking at that is how much you describe that local food system and what is you or your organization's role in that system. So I'll just kind of go through the panelists here. Renee, if you wouldn't mind kind of starting and kind of talking us through your connections.
Sure. Can you see my screen? I do have a few slides to guide me through it.
Yep.
Okay. So I manage the kitchen, the commercial kitchen at the Muskegon Farmers Market, which, get to the next, see if it will advance here for me. The kitchen opened in 2014, and it's a 1,800 square foot commercial kitchen. We have licenses by MDARD, which is the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, as well as the Health Department. And the main reason we have licenses is so that we can hold events and also sell food and do sampling out at the farmers market. It's an incubator for food startup businesses. So over the past 4 or 5 years, we've had probably 20 or so food businesses that have started in the Muskegon area, as well as a few that were transitioning either to they were in a location, for example, Marat's Bakery, who most of us know. They were located up in Oceana County and needed space while they were transitioning from that building, waiting for their new building in downtown Muskegon. So they were in our kitchen for like 6 months. I'm not going to read all of the equipment that we have available in the kitchen. So our mission is to provide commercial space that is rentable by the hour for these businesses. We also have a lot of other activities that happen in the kitchen related to food, but that is the main mission, is to be an incubator for food startup businesses and to offer them this space. So it's pretty low cost. We're talking on average $15 an hour to use the kitchen. No minimum number of hours, anything like that. That gives them, access to professional equipment. We have some storage, either cooler, freezer, or dry storage that they have access to. We mostly help them in their business process. We mostly help them in the beginning stages with, we have people come to us and have no clue how to get themselves licensed with a food license. So we help them with those kinds of things and putting their standard operating procedures together. Most of the makers, we call them makers in the kitchen, they network with each other and learn from each other. So that's a benefit to being there. Potentially, it's not a guarantee that when they use the kitchen that they can sell at the farmer's market. They still have to go through the normal application process, but it does give them access to do that. We have events as well. We have open houses, taste testing, things like that to help promote their businesses. And we are also, there are about 15 commercial kitchens like us around the state of Michigan. So we are a network, and the managers of all those kitchens get together like 4 times a year to share experiences and build on the knowledge that we've all gained, because the starting block up in Hart was actually the very first commercial kitchen like us in the state of Michigan. But it's good for us to network and know what each other is doing. Kind of our niche, I believe, is that we are connected to the Muskegon Farmers Market. So that gives the potential to do things, much easier. There's a few of them that on the east side of the state that are connected to the markets as well. But obviously that adds to visibility of a business, because most of our makers in the kitchen do start out by selling at the farmer's market. And this also is a bridge between cottage food. That's making things in someone's home and selling them. And this gives them help with the transition between cottage food and becoming a real commercial, licensed business. So that's all I have for this section.
All right, thanks, Renee. Sorry, my mute button got stuck there a second. Rose, if you could talk a little bit about you and your organization, that would be great.
Sure. Let me try to share my screen. Okay. There we go. All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Rose Spickler. I'm the membership manager at the West Michigan Sustainable Business Forum, as well as a faculty member at the Culinary Institute of Michigan in Muskegon. Today, I'm here representing the Lakeshore Sustainability Forum, which is a regional program of West Michigan Sustainable Business Forum. We serve as a platform to connect and collaborate on sustainability interests and highlight its potential as an economic driver and as a defining feature of the Lakeshore as an economy and as a destination. Our goal overall is to elevate sustainability success stories and interests in Muskegon and Northern Ottawa County, and we work to improve the connectivity to regional, statewide, and national initiatives of local interest. Part of our efforts are focused on the local food system, and we have a representation within our participants and our members from the local food system. And then due to my background in food and the hospitality and culinary industry, it's a particular focus of mine within the forum as well. In the past year, we have worked with local representatives to organize educational webinars and research efforts for the food system, including webinars on Lakeshore health, equity, and social justice, resiliency of local farms, and employee wellness and food systems. We also have done research with the Harvard Law Institute about West Michigan liability and incentives for food donation and food waste diversion. And we've worked with the Center of Regional Foods for Regional Food Systems at MSU as well on some research and some educational opportunities. And then 2 of our task forces for the West Michigan Sustainable Business Forum include our Solid Waste Task Force, which does focus on food a bit, as well as our Food Recovery Council. We try to prioritize the balance between the circular economy approach, so looking at the entire food system, as well as the food justice approach to addressing the local food system.
All right. Thanks, Rose. I appreciate that. Lori Lundell, if you could talk a little bit about Lundell Farms and your role there.
Sure, thanks. I believe that maybe Renee is going to share some slides for me, if that's possible. Oh, Sophie, thank you. Okay, so my name is Lori Lundell. I am the owner, along with my husband, at Lundell Farms in North Muskegon. We have approximately 50 members CSA, which is a community supported agriculture. We also have a variety of different proteins that we sell. So eggs, pork, lamb, chicken, turkey, occasionally beef, and with a large variety of produce. We are a small, organic, but not certified, diversified farm. We've been doing this for somewhere around 15 years. We'd like to, we started kind of 20 years ago, just doing it for ourselves, and then it just slowly expanded to where we are now. I was able to leave my full-time job 3 years ago. I think this was my third season full-time on the farm, and my husband John just left his full-time employment earlier this spring to do his own thing, and he's now doing excavating, which is a little side thing of the farm. So we really enjoy sharing our local produce with others in the area. I'm really passionate about local food and healthy food. I am also a certified holistic health coach. So a lot of what I do is focused on that local and healthy food and getting that out to our community. I think it's very important to share those things with our community. As I said, when we started, we were just doing this for our family, for ourselves and our children. And I just knew that it was very important to have good quality food for us and for my kids. And then just decided, we really need to share this with others. And so and like I said, it's a passion of mine. And so it's something that we've just continued on with. And it's been going well. And we're really appreciating the support of the community. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much, Laurie. Peter, I have you on next. Can you give us a little intro on yourself? You're on mute, Peter.
Sorry about that. Thank you. I had a few images here. My name's Peter Bain. I live in Montague Township, and I farm 10 acres with my family here, my partner and my daughter and son-in-law. We've raised vegetables and carried them to market in Montague, and we've sold privately to customers. But much of my work involves long-distance connections. I serve as the executive director of a continental organization involved in permaculture teaching and design called PINA, the Permaculture Institute of North America. If I can share the screen, maybe I can show you some images of that. This is a clip from PINA's website showing an example of permaculture education. We work across the US, Canada, Mexico, and Central America and the Caribbean. Most of our members are in the United States, and many of them are professionals like myself. I've been involved in permaculture education for 30 years, teaching often privately, but sometimes in public colleges to a wide range of ages and walks of life, students of all kinds. So the work of PINA is to support improvement and professionalism and enhancement of permaculture's ecological systems design. Let me see. What have I got here? Well, yeah, I think that there's an image of our bivouac. I also work with a regional group that's connected to PINA called the Permaculture Institute of Great Rivers and Lakes Permaculture Institute. And we are in the 6 states surrounding the Great Lakes and the Ohio River, from Wisconsin to Kentucky. And we get people together to learn and discuss issues, just as this forum is doing. And we often organize educational events and tours, as in this urban farm in Cincinnati here. And then, a little closer to home, I work with Mickey Mouse here in the upper right picture. That's my partner, Keith Johnson. And we have a young orchard and a solar home and poultry on range, and are expanding our offerings each season. We've been operating here about 6 years. So the last bit of my portfolio is I'm a designer of landscapes, and we do consulting for landowners, farmers, urban dwellers on all kinds of scales. So that's a glimpse of me. Thanks.
All right, thanks so much, Peter. Last, Samantha, can you talk to us about all the great things McLaughlin Grows is doing?
Absolutely. Share my screen quick. Yeah, so sorry, everybody. I was trying to make it big, but I'll just keep it like this. Well, my name is Samantha Otto. I am the food and farm educator from McLaughlin Grows, or Community Encompass. Community Encompass is an organization within Muskegon County that focuses on improving our core city neighborhoods under 4 different pillars, including housing, youth, neighboring, as well as food and farm. So I follow under the food and farm sector, which includes McLaughlin Grows Urban Farm. McLaughlin Grows is about a 2-acre urban farm in Muskegon, right downtown. It's actually 3 separate city lots. We have one right by Hackley Hospital and a couple others distributed amongst some different areas of the city in Muskegon. And the farm works to supply an abundant amount of fresh, fair, and affordable local food to community members within those within those neighborhoods, and as well as to engage and educate with individuals on that food and encourage them to put it on their plates. As far as where you can find McLaughlin Grows, we have about a 50-person CSA, which is pretty diverse as far as who are members within our CSA. We're also at the Muskegon Farmers Market. We host a free farm stand weekly for anybody to come to, and we also do quite a bit of community collaboration with other organizations and businesses within our community. We also do quite a bit of programming, which is sort of where my position falls. As far as our programming, it's very focused on educating the community on local food in terms of access, nutrition, and equity. I like to say that we like to teach people how to navigate the local food system through sourcing, purchasing, preparing, and preserving fresh, fair, and affordable options. Some of our programming is in partner with local healthcare affiliates. So we have prescription for health programs that community members can actually be prescribed to attend if they have or are at risk of having a dietary illness. Sort of the idea that food is medicine. We also do quite a bit with youth and youth empowerment, as well as a lot of neighborhood and communal focused programming. And yeah, that's about all I have. But yeah, it's good to be here with you all.
Right, great. Thanks so much, Samantha. All right, kind of next section here, going to work through some questions for the panelists. Our discussion this evening is how climate change is affecting and will affect how we access food in our communities. I think one of the things as we start thinking about those changes within our communities, we start looking at how things like not only the access to food, but how changes in transportation, how we're going to look at our communities in the future. We have also, as all of us know, gone through a pandemic, or going through a pandemic, and it's caused us to all kind of take a pause and reflect on what is working as far as food access within our communities. So kind of the next series of questions here is a little bit related to a pandemic, but also looking at the bigger picture. So over the past several months, all of our lives have been impacted by the coronavirus and given us pause. And in many ways, we've become more local in so many aspects of our lives. So I'm going to ask a few of the panelists here because all these questions are related. But the first question here is, what lessons have you learned during the pandemic and how this relates to our food system moving forward? I'd kind of like to start off with Lori. Lori being on the front lines here of producing food and interacting with our local community. What lessons have you learned kind of coming out of the pandemic here?
So yeah, that's a great question, of course. Pandemic has been crazy for everyone. On the farm here, it was very interesting when the pandemic first started. We started to get a lot of people calling that had not been regular customers before. Our regular customers, of course, were very interested in getting more from the farm, but we had new people as well, which is great because we like to have, as many local customers as we can. So some of the things we learned, I think that we definitely learned that our food supply chain is at risk and was shown to be lacking. The shelves in the grocery stores were empty of certain things. We still see some shortages on some items throughout the stores, which is odd, really, but it's still happening. Back in the spring, potatoes went fast, flour, chicken apparently was a big one. And so some of these things we were able to come through for our customers. So the way I see it, we definitely learned that our supply chain has some issues and we need to take a look at that. But what we did learn is that local food is not that difficult to obtain, as some people might have previously thought. There are many ways to get local food. As we've already talked in this, there's the farmers markets, multiple farmers markets around us. There are many CSAs, which are membership programs that you can be a member of, and other ways to get local food. And so I think that's something that we really need to focus on. Looking at, like I said, the supply chain being lacking, we do have options for the local farmers and food creators also. Personally, at our farm, what we learned was that we wanted to have no contact for many of our CSA members specifically. We do offer delivery. So there were some of our customers that took us right up on that delivery offer and had that. So in those cases, on a weekly basis, I would drop a bag of fresh produce on their porch. I asked that each member had a cooler sitting on their porch with a lid so that I could put the food in it, shut the lid so that the neighborhood critters wouldn't get into it. And then they were able to just get that produce without ever even seeing me. And so we had that, way to get the no contact food. So that was great. We also have on-farm pickup regularly for our CSA. So that's our standard. And so typically they come into our small farm store and we have things set up buffet style. So I offered that this year for those that were interested. And many of our members still did that. We just requested masks and most people took turns coming in the store. We did one at a time for the most part. But we also had some people that picked theirs up. I would pack their bag for them and just leave it right outside the door. And they would just swing in and pick that up. And so that was a lesson that we learned, that we could do different things to make it less contact for our customers and give them the local food without risking the contact with someone that might have COVID.
All right, thanks, Lori. I guess just a follow-up question to that. So was there an interest, you said that you started getting a lot of calls kind of going into this. Was there a lot of interest just in making that local connection that you hadn't seen before? that this kind of spurred people to recognize that there were issues that they hadn't thought about?
Yeah, definitely we saw more of that than we had. Like I said, there were people new to us that were calling and ordering chickens in advance and getting, wanting to get on our waiting lists for our CSA or for produce or for our meats. And yeah, they were very interested and very, it was new to them. We definitely had people. I actually heard multiple of our customers that maybe wanted to buy a half a hog or something like that say that they didn't have access to freezers. I don't know if any of you have heard this, but apparently there's a shortage on large freezers. And so that was one of the things as well. So many of these people had not purchased bulk meat, I guess I would say, in the past, and had decided to do that, but then had to scramble to try to find a freezer, some space to keep the food in. So yeah, it was definitely something new for a lot of these people. And I think it's been going well for them.
All right, great. Thanks, Lori. Samantha, kind of interested in your viewpoint there, kind of lessons learned as well, especially being in kind of that urban environment and that interaction with the neighborhoods and the communities there. I suppose there's a whole different concept of what's happening and those connections. And so what did you learn? What were you seeing within the community at McLaughlin Grows?
Absolutely. So over at McLaughlin Grows, we serve like a wide range of individuals, and within that range is a lot of individuals who are food insecure. And so COVID was just like a really scary time for a lot of the customers and individuals that we were serving, as far as, like they were just so concerned about getting food on their plate, but also just had this added interest of, we really know that we should be conscious of like the food that we put on our plate, and sort of the who, what, when, where, and why of how to like source it and purchase it and prepare and preserve it. And so it was awesome. We have like our prescription for health programming that has always had a pretty consistent number, but we've had so many people ask to be a part of it just to get some of that additional information and knowledge. So it's, while the pandemic has been like a really terrible thing, it's been sort of a wake-up call for some of our community members that maybe didn't have an interest in this knowledge before or this information, and are now just really engaged with it. I've just seen a lot of really positive like interaction and feedback in regards to people reaching out with interest and wanting to learn more and wanting to sort of change their lifestyle in terms of food. So it's been, for as bad as the pandemic has been, I think it has brought out some really valid points within our community and the food that surrounds it.
Have you found, you mentioned that you had to kind of very quickly start getting out additional information. Did you have additional resources or people who were able then to weigh in and help those individuals to kind of overcome those obstacles? Or was it all put on your shoulders?
We're really fortunate to have a lot of really great partners who were also, sort of facing some of the same upfront challenges of, okay, how do we do this? A lot of our challenges really came to, it really came down to how do we serve people from a remote standpoint during a pandemic, when that was not a thing before. So there were a lot of concerns in terms of that, but within our partnership with other organizations and businesses within the community who are sort of working towards some same common goals, we were sort of able to distribute tasks, sort of put on the table, like, this is what's really important, these are the problems, and these are some possible solutions to solve them. And we were sort of able to all collectively take a role within those problems and solutions to bring them all to fruition. So it was a really just well-rounded opportunity once we were able to put things in action.
Great. Thanks so much, Samantha.
Thanks.
Rose, I want to get your input a little bit. So you have this connection between food, agriculture, and hospitality. As we know, over the last 6 months, that has been a business and market that has really been impacted. So if you can kind of talk through that a little bit of what you have learned so far and what you're seeing.
Sure. Yeah. I'll speak to that, and then also we've done a lot of work in the past several in the year with highlighting discrepancies with food justice because of the pandemic. But definitely hospitality. I work a great deal with hospitality. A lot of my coworkers and friends are in the hospitality industry who have lost their jobs. And as we live in a tourism area, we've all seen that decline as well, from Grand Rapids to the Lakeshore, with all of the restaurants having to take on different serve safe practices, maybe more extreme serve safe practices, and then just not having the ability to have people come to their facilities, whether it's hotels, restaurants, other hospitality facilities. The resiliency that I've seen and the help that I've seen for employees has been really something of a wonder, whether it's help from PPP funding or just from the community. I think it's very much, I hate saying silver lining, but really highlighted our community and how successful our community is with each other around us. I have friends around the country who are in the same situation, who don't have the resiliency of or the community that we're in. So it's been something special to see communities rise up around each other for the hospitality aspects. We've also teaching at the Culinary Institute of Michigan, we've also learned that our students and our future generations are really extremely resilient, and they're constantly looking for new ways to learn. Who knew that you could teach a lab class online for people cooking? So that's kind of neat, something that we've learned as we go through this, and the demand of students to continue to learn and to continue to try to find new resources. We're starting to integrate more resiliency topics into our curriculum as well, into our hospitality and culinary curriculums. So that's an interesting thing to see. And then on the flip side, if you don't mind, about the food justice and the environmental justice, we've seen a lot of the discrepancy with that with the West Michigan Sustainable Business Forum. We've done a lot of work with that, the food security challenges, and trying to provide information and access to resources for people, and our role in the community is more of a collaborative and educational platform. So we've learned that we have access to a great deal more people with the right partners through virtual programming, which really allowed us to expand our education and information sharing base, which seemed to be very important when we're sharing out pandemic related information and public health information, and helping people with food insecurities, which, like I said, was drastically highlighted with the pandemic.
Right. Thanks, Rose. Yeah, a lot going on and kind of a new way to get the word out there to provide education. So thanks. Renee, I want to pull you into this conversation. It's a little bit lessons learned, but also if you could talk a little bit about what you think is going well, whether not only what have we learned, but what do you think some positive things that we've learned that now we can utilize to kind of make those next steps?
Sure. Well, the kitchen is a value added space, and we're processing food all day long with the makers that are in the kitchen. And Rose mentioned Serve Safe, and that, I've seen where we've really had to step up our practices on handling food, making sure that everything is sanitary in the kitchen. Typically, we have shared the space, so there might be 2 or 3 makers in there at the same time working. But with COVID, we have, not allowed that. We only let one business in there at a time to work on their product. So that's, one of the things that we've learned, and I mean, we knew it, but we had to step up our practices on that. Something positive, I think, that came out of it that we, businesses that work out of the kitchen pretty much came to a halt because they're selling at the farmers markets who weren't open for a few months there. Many of them are into smaller retail places like Boomtown Market, which is our new grocery store downtown Muskegon. They were open but selling very little, just people were in shock, I think. So, instead of the businesses that work out of the kitchen stepping back and just, oh, woe is me, they really took that time to work on their business and find new ways to go to market. So one example is we've got a relish maker in there, and she is now in 17 retail stores across Michigan. So, I think, and then collaboration between them as well. We had 3 of the makers put together a subscription box and are now marketing that. So there's tea, there's cookies, there's jam in this subscription box that someone can subscribe to and receive one monthly, or buy it as a gift for someone. So I saw a lot of collaboration and brainstorming on how can we do things differently. So that was really encouraging.
Renee, did you find as this kind of got moving, so you talked about kind of that value added, were some of those people using the kitchen all of a sudden had an interest in finding some more of those local connections because maybe how they were resourcing produce or something before wasn't available, so now that they figured out they needed to find another connection? Was that part of it, or did they already have those strong connections?
No, I believe they took time to work on that as well, because they're all pretty focused on purchasing from local farmers or local suppliers. So, I think that, most of their products are, I don't know, they had supply chain issues like Lori described, but I know that some of them took the opportunity to find other sources, talk to local farmers. I know one of our jam maker that's in there, she needed to find a different jar for her jams. And she found a local source out of Detroit versus wherever she was getting them from before. It was, I think, in the US, but not Michigan. So I think they did take that opportunity, yes.
Okay, that's great to hear. Thanks, Renee. Appreciate it. Peter, if I can pull you into this conversation as well. I want to highlight a little bit of a quote that I pulled, some narrative out of your book, the Permaculture Handbook, in your chapter entitled Culture and Community. There it is. All right.
Yep. Book.
So in there, you write that the new resources needed by the culture of energy descent are primarily biological, local, and rooted in the land. The energies of the future are also those of the past: sunshine and wind and rain, biomass, animals, and human labor. So if you can talk to us a little bit about kind of what you've learned and kind of, these words and how they're connected, and maybe even pull in a little bit of what do you see we still need to do to kind of help make these connections to take that next step so we're well prepared.
Okay, well, I have had time to put a few images here, and maybe I can use them as a backdrop and try to get at your question, which is a very good one. Let's see if, where are we here? Okay, well, so the dominant situation we face behind these enormous crises we're in the midst of, an economic contraction and a pandemic with no clear end that's disrupting society right and left all around the globe, is that our energy basis in petroleum and other fossil fuels has to decline over time. You know, there's been a lot of back and forth about it for decades, but it is already, we're already seeing that the oil industry is retrenching because the price of oil has collapsed. It's kind of counterintuitive, but anyway, what it means is all economies are going to become more local. And what we've done in the process of growing the industrial economy for 100 and some years is we've hollowed out the base levels of economy, which economy is a word that's rooted in the Greek word for household. So all our economies are originally household economies, and everything else we build up from there. But as we built more and more mass production and distribution systems, we let the household hollow out. Every house in America before 1910 that had any substance was built with a pantry, but not many are in recent decades. Because people stored food, because there weren't even corner groceries 120 years ago. That's a phenomenon of the 20th century. You know, Terre Haute, Indiana had 423 corner groceries by the mid-1920s. But a generation earlier, people were on the farm. So we've seen a revolution in a few generations. And what we'll need to be preparing for is to draw more resources from our own local spaces, including the homes we live in, yards we occupy, the urban areas we live in, our local farms. So I've got a few key points here, and one of them is the fundamentals ecologically are about water, carbon, and how do we accelerate fertility exchange. So my first picture here about local food systems is you've got to harvest and manage water. All roofs are watersheds, and water is falling out of the sky still for us, fortunately. It was a dry summer, everybody around here probably noticed, but we still have water not far underground. We have water in the lakes. We have water that rains on us. It's raining again, thankfully, this fall. But what we need to do is manage the flow of it so we have available water. In our case, at Blue Sky Farm, we are on sand. So we had to expand our irrigation system and start storing water in lined ponds. Another piece is the carbon. Our sandy soils are fairly low in carbon. Other farmers around us have better soils, many of them, you know, commercial farmers, better placed farmers, legacy farmers. They have more clay and loam. They can grow more, you know, heavy feeding crops. What we're trying to do is build up carbon in our soils, and there are a lot of different ways to do it, but cover cropping is one of the preferred paths. And what it means is you grow a crop to just feed the soil. It might be like this is a stand of rye here. And now we have new tools that help us terminate those crops and let them decompose into the soil by soil organisms without plowing them, because plowing, introducing oxygen and air into the soil, everybody had always thought you have to do that. But what it does is it burns up the organic matter, which means you lose access to the minerals, which are stored in connection with the organic matter. So then the food becomes less nourishing. These are all fundamentals that most people are not taught. Many people on this call probably understand, but a lot of folks in our community haven't internalized yet. So this is a roller crimper. You pull it behind a tractor and it breaks the stem of the cover crop. It stops growing and then it decomposes as a mulch on the surface. Those kinds of changes, that's actually fairly small. You know, this is something that's produced in a small factory. That comes from Pennsylvania. We could make them here in Michigan. We've made a lot of agricultural equipment in Michigan. We'll need new, smaller scale agricultural equipment for the small farms of the future. Then we don't think a lot about our trees as a source of energy or problem. If you heat with wood, yeah, that's great. You get your fuel wood from the wood lot, or you buy from someone who has one. But our trees are all the time improving soils, building up through mulch, through root sloughing, and we have access to that carbon, which we can process. What we've done here on our farm is make charcoal. These locust trees up in the upper left are a weedy tree. You know, everybody knows they have thorns, they grow up in groves and so forth, but they're phenomenal at improving soil, and they're a great bee forage. So I put my beehives under the locust trees. Then they, when we take them down to harvest poles for fencing, or not these species, but tree oak logs out of our woods for shiitake inoculation, mushrooms, we can take the waste material, the top material, and put it through a slow burn process, make charcoal out of it, use that charcoal to improve the diet of our animals, because it improves their sanitation and hygiene, inoculate it as they drop it out. As manure, it goes into the soil, stays as a durable carbon there, can be a water filtration agent, has a lot of values aside from, you know, roasting barbecue and so forth. There's a lot of things that are not common practices for us yet, but that we need to recover. So this is maybe a glance at the top line on some of those things. And if I could just leave one thought with us, it's that we probably need, and we won't find out what these needs are until we get farther into the changes that are now dramatically underway. We will need different kinds and scale of technology. Just as people here on the call have pointed out, creating kitchens that can be shared, creating freezers that can be shared, as once the case years ago, creating mobile slaughter facilities for backyard poultry flocks. If everybody wants their own eggs or neighborhood eggs, what do you do when you've got some extra roosters? It's a lot of trouble to pluck a rooster. But if somebody's got a plucking machine and a scalding bath, and they make these, you can roll it in, you can work the day, you can reduce extra chickens into freezer meat. Those are the sorts of steps that will help fill in the gaps that we don't even know about yet. They're going to start emerging. So thanks for the question, Jeff, letting me rattle on.
Yeah, you're welcome, Peter. Thanks so much. We're going to open it up for some questions from the audience here in just a minute. I guess one last question for Renee, just because Renee's been involved in so many things, kind of my local hero. Every time you hear something about sustainability or what's happening in Muskegon, it's Renee's on that board. Renee's helping with this. So has really been a part of the local community and really a focus on sustainability. Be interested in your take on what are some of these steps that we can do to form these connections between local farms, local farmers, the local community, and get them to start thinking about some of these things that Peter was talking about. It's bigger than maybe just making those connections, but what are the next steps to get the community to think about where we're headed and what we need to do?
Well, and Rose can speak to this too, because recently there was a food, I'm not using the correct name, but Food Policy Council being formed in the Muskegon area. We've got one in Ottawa County. I'm not sure, there's one in Kent County, but the purpose of that group would be to do just that kind of work. So, I don't know, Rose, if you have any updates or any information you want to share on that, but, it's a way that we can connect all the pieces of the food system together. Lori, I think, has been a part of that too. So, Rose, you want to speak to that?
Sure, absolutely. So, yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So we were in full swing. We had our very first meeting. I believe it was 2 days after we started hearing about the pandemic. Yeah, absolutely. And we are hopeful that this winter we will be kind of rejuvenating that organization. So that was the Muskegon Food Alliance, which would be the embodiment of a food policy council in Muskegon County as well. So we're excited to see where that goes, and the leadership team and everybody that'll be involved with that. And perhaps we can get the list of people that's on this call today, and send out information about it when it's more solidified. That seems like maybe a good place to start with that as well. But yeah, so basically what it is, it would be it's a system and a collaboration of all food things to create a web of so that everybody knows what's going on with food, any sort of food related things in Muskegon County, whether it's growing, distributing, processing, consuming, the waste of it, all of those aspects. So it would be, and then the legislation as well, which would be the Food Policy Council piece of it. So.
All right, great. Thanks, Renee. Thanks, Rose. Tanya, do we have any questions that you can share with the panelists here that we can maybe address? Otherwise, I have some additional questions, but I want to give people a chance to ask their own questions.
Take a look. Some of them have been answered within the chat. I've noticed that. I know, here's a question. Somebody says, what's going on in Muskegon County with composting? Not exactly sure. I mean, I know that we don't have an industrial compost site. But beyond that, I know we've got, Jeff, you probably know too, we have some composting going on at your city and with the Solid Waste Authority. Do you want to take that on a little bit?
Sure. I can't really speak for kind of the larger Muskegon County. I know for City of Montague, specifically, and City of Whitehall does the same thing, has a kind of a leaf collection, leaf and grass clippings collection area. We don't do on-site composting here because of the DEQ permitting requirements and the volumes that we create. But we have a partnership with a local farmer where he takes that carbon matter and brings it out, and he composts it and then uses it for larger agricultural fields. The other thing that we've been starting to do is explore a little bit of how to maybe get some of that compost back into the community. So once it is composted, bringing it back to the community, bringing it back to the source, and having the local residents then have access to it. So kind of reforming that connection. We've explored a little bit, talked with actually the city of Charlevoix and also Harbor Springs. They do some composting up there and how they manage those areas. So there's some exploration. I know for this area, and I'm trying to integrate that. I'm not sure about the kind of larger Muskegon County area though.
It seems like, I mean, I think the short answer is it's a little bbit fragmented. There are some areas
Absolutely.
where we have it and some areas where we don't. I'm going through the questions here, and let me see. Someone did ask about food banks and food trucks. We actually decided that food pantries was a topic for another conversation as we were going through this. We worked for several months to come up with this panel, and so there were so many things relating to food. We put food banks, food pantries on a kind of a hold list for maybe a topic all on its own. So we have more food topics coming. Let's see, someone asked about what's the role of migrant workers in Muskegon's food system and how they've been impacted. I'm not sure that's a significant role in the Muskegon area? I'm not sure who would know that, Jeff.
Yeah, I don't know. I know north of here, there's quite a bit of migrant labor utilized for the fruit production and picking, but not so much in Muskegon County that I'm aware of.
Not far from where I live, just north in Oceana County, there's quite a bit of migrant labor. It's not highly visible, but you can tell that it's there. And they're picking the vegetable crops and the fruits.
Yeah, there's a significant migrant population in Oceana County. Food preservation by freezing, canning. Are there people that use drying as a food preservation and are they bringing that dry food to market? Maybe that's a Renee question. Maybe or I don't know, Jeff, who would do that into that.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any bulk food drying going on. I know that a lot of same as the Muskegon Farmers Market, there are people that have dried foods that they are using as part of the cottage food production that they're doing into baked goods and things like that. But I don't know of anybody that's doing like bulk food drying, bringing it to market. How about you, Renee? Anything in Muskegon?
No. I mean, just herbs and things like that, but I'm not aware of, any other that's going on. I don't know, does any of our farmer, Lori or Samantha?
At a home scale, there's kind of a narrow window for good drying most years, and it comes late in the summer when you've got significant crops and still some retained heat. But otherwise, drying is going to be fed by commercial energies, industrial energies.
Don mentioned that McLaughlin Grows, Samantha, had composting last year.
Yeah, so our previous farm manager, Michaela, actually sort of created a really great composting program. This year, we actually sort of evolved it a little bit further in terms of actually hiring a compost intern to sort of learn about the composting. It was really more so a downtown Muskegon effort. I don't think they had the capacity to branch out into like a larger portion of Muskegon County. But it's something that, has gone really well the past couple of years and that we hope to be able to sort of find a way to sustainably branch out on or partner with others, out within the community to create a greater impact.
I think I've got all the questions. Please let me know if I've missed them because some of them have been answered within the chat box.
So I'll jump back to the panelists for a little bit here to kind of wrap some things up here. I guess let's start maybe with Rose. So if you could name kind of one need for Muskegon County's food in relation to climate change. So what's like the top need that Muskegon County needs to do? I know it's probably going to be hard to pick one, but kind of what's that top thing that we could do in Muskegon County related to food to really impact climate change? What's, number one on your list? If we could do this.
Yes, that is a challenge to just choose one. But I would say, I think a realistic thing that helps would be a discussion of the dietarian consumption trends. with regards to climate change. We have a lot of research on it, and there is some distribution of the information, but to continue to do more and create more focus on research and understanding how the food choices have potential environmental, health, and social implications, which the health and social implications are massive as well in Muskegon County. And a lot of research on the best way to communicate that information to our specific community, which is a very different information distribution than it would be in Grand Rapids or a larger city. But I think that would have a really big impact on the discussion on dietary consumption trends on from climate change. The like less meat eating, and I think probably everybody's pretty familiar with what I'm referring to, but I think that's what I would identify.
I want to jump in a minute, Jeff, because Kathy Evans put in the chat, keep talking. And I don't think she means just for the rest of the half an hour.
Keep talking.
That's not hard for me, so.
Okay. So kind of taking off of that, Rose, so interestingly, kind of that dietary discussion. I did a quick search one time to see how many apps are there out there that you can track how much fewer, how much less meat you're eating in a day, in a week, and then it actually gives you a climate score. And there were hundreds of them, which was pretty amazing. Looking at, everybody's on their phone these days, everybody's on their iPad these days. One way to kind of track your consumption and kind of start that conversation. So I thought that was interesting. So yeah, maybe that's one avenue.
Yeah, that would definitely be, I didn't even know that those were out there, and I think that would be awesome. I do have to point out that because we have such a unique demographic in Muskegon County, an app like that would be fantastic, but the access to the internet and access to technology is, I think, would be a barrier to using something like that in our county, which is why I say it's so specific. I also wouldn't mind hearing Lori or any of the other farmers discuss their thoughts on those dietary impacts to them, and because I know Lori, you sell proteins, and I don't know about the other farmers, but I'm just curious about the climate change thoughts with that. And
yeah, so I can speak to that a little bit. I know that one of the concerns with the proteins is factory farms. I think from my perspective, that's a big one. The factory farms can do a lot of damage, and that's one of our big problems. So I would say that in addition to cutting back on some of that meat consumption, working to find local sources for that as well can be very beneficial. So working within your local community here in Muskegon County, we have multiple small farms that have access to meats that can get you those things right local. And I think that's a big help as well. So then you're cutting down not only on the large factory farms, but then also on the transportation. One stat that I like to throw around a lot is that the average food in the grocery store has traveled 1,500 miles to get there. And so that's a lot right there just on the greenhouse gases and whatnot that are going from the transportation. So I think that's important as well. So not only cutting back on the meat, but cutting back on the transportation. So you might want some asparagus, but if it's coming from Guatemala, that's a lot different than if it's coming from a farm up the road here in Muskegon County, or even, next door in Oceana. So I think those are things that we can look at as well that can be very beneficial and help us out.
I'm going to step in just a minute, Jeff. We've got 15 minutes, and I'm still hoping we get a top need from everybody, because we really wanted to make sure this, and it's going there, it's helping, but we wanted to make sure that this was an action-oriented panel. So, want to make sure we get all the needs from the panelists. We have a special guest who's going to give us a snippet of a presentation she's going to do for us on November 18th. And Sophie's going to be doing a little wrap up, Sophie from the Sierra Club. And then we have a few questions here. So Jeff, how do we do this?
So we'll go through it quickly here. So Peter, if you could talk to us just if you had what's the top need that Muskegon County can do related to food for climate change?
Well, I put a number of suggestions in the chat so people can review them. I think increased food storage. I think indoor growing needs to expand to resist the highly variable weather that's coming with climate change. We need drought tolerant varieties and cultivation methods, and we need to be looking to borrow them out of the Southwest and traditional dryland cultures. We need, I concur with Lori about CAFO and factory meat production. The damage there isn't just the transportation, it's that it sets up monoculture production and it separates animals from the land, which needs their fertility, and builds up too much concentrated waste in one place. And then we're bound to have accidents, floods that rush all that stuff down into the lakes and rivers. Those are some of my top pieces.
All right, thanks, Peter. Samantha, how about for you? What's top need that you see for Muskegon County?
Hey, yeah, it's such a hard question, but I'd say the top need that I see is definitely education. I have the opportunity to work with so many individuals throughout the community, and no matter what level of education they come from, the whole aspect of food education seems to have been skipped completely. And it's very inspiring to be able to see people learn a little bit more about food, but also just there's such a great need, especially right now, to delve a little bit deeper and provide some additional resources for our community, I think.
All right, great. Thanks, Samantha.
Yeah.
Renee, how about you? Top need for Muskegon County, food production and kind of the climate change impacts.
I want to go down the local path and also, local as in supporting our younger, smaller farmers, because I don't remember what the average age of farmers are these days, but it's well past normal retirement. And many of those farmers do not have children that are willing to take over the family farm. And we see young, entrepreneurs getting into farming, but it's really hard. And not everyone can withstand that. But so I think we need to figure out ways to support those younger, younger farmers. We have a number of them around Muskegon County or surrounding counties that we can do that with, whether it be, purchasing a CSA from them. I do that every year, and I usually pick a new farmer that, and we've had people move to the area to specifically do that. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
All right. Thanks, Renee. I would mimic that. We even saw at the farmers market that some of our original vendors that were there and actually brought the most diverse crops were retiring because farming's hard work, wear and tear, and we unable to find kind of some of those new younger farmers to support. So I think that's something that even farmers markets need to do, is to do that support. Lori, you were kind of jumped in on a earlier question there, but so what's your single need if you had one thing that you want us to leave with today for Muskegon County?
I go along with what Sam said. I think education is so important, and education on a couple things, on the local aspect of it is very important. And also the importance of the fact that eating in season can be important for that local aspect of it. So a lot of people are used to having any produce that they want at any time in the grocery store, and that can't be purchased locally. So if you want certain items, learning to eat with the seasons can be very beneficial. Not only is eating in the season good for our health, it's actually very good for the environment. And so I think that's an important aspect of it. And so education and learning about how to eat and what to eat, when to eat, is important for everyone in the community.
Yeah, great, Lori. Thanks. That kind of reminds me of, Barbara Kingsolver did this whole story on eating through the seasons and what her family did from January to December of one year. Not only growing it, but then eating it based on what they had. So great comment. Tanya, you had a couple other questions from the audience?
Yes, let me see. Okay, two questions. One, are there any commercial fish farms in Muskegon County? I don't know who would know that answer. I'm not aware of any.
Neither am I.
Okay, next one is there data of what areas of Muskegon County have the worst access to food? Is it rural or urban? Would that be either Rose or Samantha? You would have an answer to that?
So I have absolutely seen statistics, and I feel like there is like a resource sheet somewhere, but I am not sure whose that is. I would be happy to share it though if I can find it.
Okay. And we are likely to send an email out to folks so we can put it there. I think that's what I have, and I know that we do have Lauren Tarr, who is also going to just give us a quickie sneak peek. We're also going to be having Kathy said Peterson's is a commercial fishing company with the Fishmonger's Wife outlet. Anyway, Lauren Tarr is a PhD student in environmental policy doing some research for us on what you can legally grow on your property in Muskegon County. And she's far enough along. She wants to give us a little quick sneak peek. And she will, we're going to be also doing lunch break conversations, and she's going to be our first lunch break conversation on November 18th at noon. And she'll be talking about growing your own food in Muskegon County, regulations and resources. Why don't you go ahead, Lauren? Sure. Lauren, can you hear?
Sorry. Okay, I was muted. Okay. Thank you, everyone. It's been a really great panel. I'm glad to listen in and learn from everyone. So like Tanya said, this upcoming talk, I've been looking at the different regulations across Muskegon County on what a personal, like individual, can grow. So this talk will be November 18th, and it'll be just a little presentation about what are the different ordinances as you go from the different cities and townships and villages, and everything's just a little bit different. And if you're trying to start a garden or have chickens or all these little growing your own food, where can you find resources to do that? And if currently your township or city doesn't allow you to do certain things, what are the process to changing those policies or those local ordinances? So just a little sneak peek. I'll be providing this kind of spreadsheet about going through city by city, township by township. So looking at, can you have a chicken? Some places, yes, but only if they're a pet. Some places, yes, if you have a lot of this size. So it really varies. It could just be across the border, the line, and it'll be a different rule. So just kind of mapping out what you can do where. And that will be on Wednesday, November 18th, midday or noon over Zoom. And I think the invitation will be emailed out to everybody.
All right, thanks, Lauren. And I don't know if everybody saw there, but Montague does allow chickens and gardens. So, we're ahead of the curve.
I've seen them in the streets. They're walking down the street, Jeff.
I guess I'll let you wrap up, Tanya, but I just personally want to thank everybody that joined us this evening and our panelists. I know I learned a lot and looking forward to what can be done in the next couple months, over the next couple years, and see where this leads us. So thanks everybody for joining us. Tanya.
Well, I just want to say a quick thank you before I hand it over to Sophie, but thank you, Jeff. I knew you would do the job that you did. And that's why I begged you to be the moderator. But I think it's very inspiring to see this kind of a panel and this kind of work happening in the county, especially in some challenging times. So I want to thank all the panelists for their contributions and for those who are participating. And certainly we're going to be continuing these. And then Sophie has her remarks that she would like to make as well.
Thank you. And I just want to echo what has already been said, but thank you everybody for taking the time out of your evenings to have this really meaningful conversation. To the panelists and to our moderator, it was just wonderful to hear what's going on in the Muskegon County area and surroundings. So please don't let this be the last time you have these conversations. This is just a piece of it, the discussion that we hope to continue in topics around climate change and topics around how we can get involved at the community level. So find that area. I think we found a really unique one in talking about local food systems. We see how much it impacts us as individuals and our communities. And so please continue these conversations. We will hopefully be sharing contact information for those who are able and willing to provide it to keep that discussion going. But utilize your local organizations, your local farms, farmers markets, whatever it may be. But don't stop talking now just because we're about to all hang up. So thanks again, everybody, for participating and engaging on such a thoughtful discussion, and have a great rest of your evening.
And someone did have a question about, would we be able to share this? It is being recorded. We will make the recording available to folks. And just like Sophie said, this is just the beginning of these discussions. And certainly also reach out to us, reach out to me, to Sophie, to Renee, to others with your ideas for moving forward. Our goal is to inspire and assist action. The talk was marvelous. I really, really appreciate it. And I think, I think we need to make sure that we just use what we've learned tonight and the connections to get some good actions going in Muskegon County. So thank you very much, everybody. I've really appreciated this evening. So have a good evening.